Welcome in. It's week 1 of the college Splatcast. We're joined by Davidson running back commit Price Davis. Welcome in.
Thank you, guys.
We are also joined by G. Russ, James Chapman. Aiden could not make it. He's a D1 baseball player, which means he's going to have pitcher and catching meetings. Not D1, D2, but he's going to have pitcher and catcher meetings at the moment. But let me go ahead and explain what this show kind of is. It's our first ever live show. Things are going to go wrong. They already are going wrong. We were going to be live on YouTube. YouTube decided, let's be difficult today. That's going to happen sometimes. It's part of the show. That's part of who we are, really. But this show, we're going to pick 11 games each week. We're going to talk about them. We all have notes. We're going to keep a record, kind of like Splat Picks, but ours is just going to be specifically college football. Splat Picks coming back soon, hopefully. Also, by the way, and we're going to have one FCS matchup and a game of the week. So, should we get started, Juris?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Our first game is going to be Boise State versus Georgia Southern. James, you got the first pick.
Yeah, I like how we talked about impact players and Maddox. What is his name? Madsen starting over former 5-star Malachi Nelson. Malachi Nelson, a transfer from USC. I think that's a little crazy in my opinion. Malachi Nelson is a dog when I'm playing NCAA 25. I had a Hawaii Dynasty. He threw for like 300 on me. It was terrible. I'm still really high on Boise State. I'm also a big fan of their blue field. They're playing in Georgia today at Georgia Southern, but I really don't think that's going to be much of a problem. I think they could sneak in as that 12th seed, that group of 5 team. And really, their big game of the year is not this. I think they need to be looking forward to next week in that Oregon game, because that one's going to be kind of brutal if Oregon gets things rolling.
Juris?
I agree with James. I think that they must be pretty high on Madsen, especially since they're starting him over the former 5-star in Nelson. One thing about Georgia Southern is that they were 4th in pass percentage last year, but they do lose their quarterback. And because of that, I think that, they won't throw it as much. And that's how they succeeded last year. So I'll go with Boise State.
Bryce?
Yeah, I'm also going to go Boise State. I think it's saying something if someone comes in after a 5-star quarterback and starts over him. I think he'll be an impact player. I think they'll still be able to throw the ball. They got some playmakers on the outside. I'm picking Boise State.
So, in my game notes, I thought that Malachi Nelson was starting, which threw a wrench into every single thing I wrote about Boise State. But I still think Boise State's going to get the win. Georgia Southern, on the sideline, on the side panel here, it says that they're number 4 in pass percentage. That's pretty good, but I do think that Boise State is just a better team overall. I think that they have a lot more talent than this Georgia Southern roster does. Plus the money line and odds are with them. So I'm going to go with Boise State for this week. All Boise right there. What's our next matchup? Kennesaw State, their first year in the FBS, and UTSA. James?
I mean, they're playing in San Antonio, which is huge. UTSA is coming off of a 9-4 season and a bowl game victory over Marshall, who is a pretty good group of 5 team normally. They're playing a glorified FCS team in Kennesaw State. I mean, it's their first season playing real football, in my opinion, and they should easily win at home. At this point, it's all about covering that 24.5-point spreads. That's probably 4 touchdowns. They're going to have to beat them by 4 touchdowns. I think it could be interesting to see if they could. UTSA is a really good group of 5 team that maybe if they have the season like they had last season, they can sneak into that 12th spot and take it over instead of Boise State or Liberty. So it's definitely a team to watch out for later in the season. But Kennesaw State's an FCS team playing a really good group of 5 team. It should be no problem for the Roadrunners?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, should be no problem for them.
Yeah, I agree with James. I think that Kennesaw State is going to be amped up for their first game in Division I, but UTSA is a very well known and respected group of 4 program now. So with that, I just think that first quarter may be interesting, but I think UTSA will come out easily on top.
I'm going to take UTSA, but I think Kennesaw, they'll probably start out kind of slow, but then I think they'll they'll straighten up, figure it out what it's like to play FBS ball, and then they'll make it a close game. But I think UTSA is going to come out with the victory.
I'm going to go along with the same lines Price said. UTSA, they have Jeff Traylor there. He's probably the most underrated coach. UTSA is also probably the most underrated program in college football, in my opinion. I feel like Jeff Traylor should have a higher paying job than what he has at UTSA, but he seems to love it down there. He's recruiting well down there. They're building something good at UTSA. Kennesaw State, first year, you really don't have the roster, in my opinion, to compete with UTSA. So that's why I'm going to go with UTSA this week. As for our next matchup, we got Western Kentucky University versus Alabama. James, go ahead and get started on this one.
Not much to say. It'll be interesting to see how DeBoer does with Jalen Milroe. DeBoer has kind of been a QB whisperer, taking Michael Penix Jr. kind of to that next level and getting him drafted as a top 10 pick to your Atlanta Falcons, Hunter. And honestly, I am pretty curious if Western Kentucky is going to wear their position helmets, where they have Big Red as the quarterback, the lineman, all that fun stuff. They also have TJ Finley, former Auburn quarterback. So I think that's a fun rematch. Former Auburn quarterback playing at Bama. And I think the spread is a little low for Alabama. I understand Western Kentucky is a pretty good, now group of 4 team, but they're playing in Tuscaloosa. It's the first game. Bama will start out slow, but we've seen the level of competition Milroe's played against, and it's just a step above Western Kentucky. I think they'll easily cover the spread. I think Milroe will eventually have a big game, second half, and honestly, Milroe shouldn't play past the third quarter. Might not even play the second half, depending on how that first half goes.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what James said. I do think TJ Finley, he loved to throw the ball last year. He's a former SEC quarterback, went to Texas State. He's now at Western Kentucky. I am interested to see Alabama's secondary since he likes throwing it so much. They lost 2 corners, both first-round picks. Caleb Downs went over to Ohio State. So I do think Western Kentucky could make it close for a quarter or two, but I do think with DeBoer now at Alabama, he'll unlock Milroe even more. And I think that in the second half, Alabama will easily carry away from Western Kentucky.
Alabama's without Saban this year. We don't know what that looks like. Haven't seen that. It's going to be really loud for Western Kentucky. They're not going to be able to get their play calls, and it's just going to be, I think it'll be a rough game for them, even though Alabama's without Saban. So I'm taking Bama.
I'm also going to go Alabama, but this could get ugly for Bama. Western Kentucky, they're very underrated. TJ Finley, very good quarterback. He's also played against Alabama, I'm pretty sure, 3 times already. He knows what Alabama is going to be like. Maybe not with Kellen DeBoer at the helm, but you also have a very, very young DB class. I think they're very young from what I can tell. TJ Finley's an experienced college quarterback. You have some experienced wide receivers at Western Kentucky. You could get exposed this week. I do think that Bama will cover. I think that Bama will be perfectly fine in this game, but I feel like if there's a game to look out for, if there's an early season trap game, this is it for Bama this week.
One question. So we're talking about this inexperienced defense on Alabama's side, as well as how good TJ Finley and Jalen Milroe both are. Do we know the over/under for this game? Because I feel like this game is one of those with an inexperienced defense and both like good quarterbacks. I feel like this one is an easy one to pick the over for.
Juris is looking it up right now.
It's 59.5.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, take the over this week. We do not bet, but take the over.
Splat pick certified.
Yes, we do not bet. Our next matchup is going to be Davidson versus Georgetown. James, go ahead and get us started on this one.
I mean, normally when we're talking Georgetown and Davidson, it's March Madness. I'm thinking basketball. Steph Curry, Allen Iverson, Pat Ewing. Honestly, couldn't find much on either of these teams. I kind of did half of the research I did for all my other teams, and that's not a knock towards you, Price. But I do like the 6 straight winning seasons, 11 straight losing. That just speaks to either side. And, Davidson is clearly the better team long term. And we have Uno on the show, so I'm not going to disrespect him. I'm picking Davidson, going with the safe pick. I want to start out this show, going undefeated. So give me Davidson.
Yeah, I agree with James. I couldn't find a ton on it either. The biggest thing, though, is the 6 straight winning seasons. Looking at their schedule, I think it could easily be 7. Georgetown has a rough schedule, because of that, I think Davidson will win.
Yeah, obviously, I'm picking Davidson. They've led FCS in rushing yards like the last 3 years, I think. They made the playoffs 4 of the last 5, I'm pretty sure. They're a good FCS team. They should win most of their conference games this year. So, love my boys. Davidson College, picking you.
Oh, I thought I was going to pick Georgetown, but then I thought about it. Georgetown does have the money line. But the last time I checked, money lines don't win teams games. So I'm going to go Davidson. I think that Davidson's going to run the ball up and down all over Georgetown. It'll be fun matchup, ESPN Plus. You can watch it on there. I'm pretty sure I found that out. There wasn't a lot of information. I tried to look up rosters. I tried to look up everything, stats. I just know that Davidson likes to run it, and I don't think Georgetown's going to be able to stop it. So run, ball, run.
With the lack of information we could find on the Davidson game, is there anything you could give us, Bryce? A little insider knowledge, anything on Davidson?
They're gonna run the ball. I mean, they're running a really interesting offense. They get the ball to their slots. They get it to the running back. Sometimes even like a fullback. Quarterback runs it. Quarterback throws well. He's a good quarterback. Yeah, great defense.
All right.
Yeah.
There you go. Next matchup. Probably I would have picked this as our game of the week. But last week I filled out the game schedules and I thought that LSU and USC would be a bit better. But this has potential to be game of the week. James.
I think it's a crime you didn't pick this as game of the week. This could be game of the season, in my opinion. Penn State walking into Morgantown, West Virginia. They had to shut down all the public schools in the area just because the Pat McAfee show was showing up in town on a Friday afternoon. I think that speaks for itself. Morgantown is going to be electric. We talk about Stadium Pulse when we're playing NCAA 25. This is going to be Stadium Pulse #1 this weekend. It's a 12 o'clock game. I'm not really sure if Penn State's going to be awake when they play this game. They have the spread. Or I don't care. West Virginia's covering. West Virginia's winning. I mean, this really sets the tone for either team. West Virginia wins this. They can take a wide open Big 12. They can make it into the playoffs. And Penn State's probably going to fire what's his name? Franklin. I don't like James Franklin. But if Penn State wins, they kind of have a cookie schedule. They'll just walk through the Big Ten. I mean, they only play Ohio State this season, so they can make the playoffs, go 11-1, 10-2, and easily sneak in there. Drew Aller, I think, is a subpar quarterback, and he's not going to be ready for Morgantown and those West Virginia Mountaineers. Give me West Virginia. Screw the spread. They're going to annihilate the spread, and they're going to take the money line. I see them winning this by 3.
That was very powerful. I agree with some of what James said. Drew Aller is he's looked good on paper, but he struggled mightily against Michigan and Ohio State. He doesn't have to play one of them this year, which is good. I do think that West Virginia will cover. I do see Penn State winning by a field goal or 6 or so, just because I think that Penn State, they have the blue chip ratio. They have more talent on the field. And first half, it may not look like it, but I think the talent will eventually pull away for the Nittany Lions.
I think this is like the first matchup in a while where it hasn't been Penn State, Ohio State, or Penn State, Michigan, where they're playing like a tough team on the road. I just don't think that Penn State's a very good team. I think they're going to start out slow. They're not going to be able to make drives on offense. They're going to have to punt. I got West Virginia in this one.
I thought about it. I went back and forth. I think West Virginia's got this one in the bag. Here's why. They're already lighting couches on fire in Morgantown. Morgantown's one of the toughest places to play. And Garrett Green, in my opinion, is going to be up for the Heisman this year. Garrett Green, very underrated quarterback, in my opinion. I think he's a very good quarterback. I mean, look at the stats. They don't really do him justice there, but I don't think he started every game last year. So with that being said, James talked about the Pat McAfee show being there. That place was electric yesterday. Couches are already on fire. Go Mountaineers. Oh, this one's a rough one. Could be a rough one. Florida State versus Boston College. James, who you got in this one?
All right. We all saw last week's game. We all saw it. Florida State looked abysmal. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Yes, they lost to a very good Georgia Tech team that if they won the ACC, I would not be shocked. And, yeah, they almost lost to Boston College last year with probably the best team they've had since Jameis Winston. But it's an FSU game at home at night. The Tomahawk chants will be fired up. It will be wild. I've seen Tallahassee at night. It's a tough place to play in, and it's Boston College. I think Boston College has the potential to cover the spread. DJ, however you say his last name, he couldn't survive at Clemson. He hardly did well. He did all right at Oregon State, and then he's coming to Florida State to try and bring this program back to the college football playoff. I don't see it happening, but I see them bouncing back this week, kind of stepping on the right foot after just whatever happened in Ireland. Thank God it was in Ireland and not in America. But I see them bouncing back. Might not cover the spread, but should be a relatively easier win.
I agree with James. I think Florida State will cover. I think that the only concern for me in Florida State is that their D-line was extremely hyped up, and they didn't look that good against Georgia Tech and a team that's 11th in rushes a game last year. They're probably going to want to run it down their throat, and that's my only concern of that. I think DJ only threw like 3 or 4 passes, more than 15-plus yards in the air before it got to receiver. I see them throwing it more, getting them more comfortable in that system, and I think Florida State will win pretty easily against Boston College.
Yeah, last week was bad. I turned it on and I'm like, what is happening? But I think they'll bounce back. I think that was a one-and-done situation for Florida State. I don't feel like they're ever that type of team, and they're losing to opponents that aren't even relevant at that point. I think DJ's going to figure it out this game, hopefully. But I'm taking Florida State.
Calling Georgia Tech irrelevant, that's going to hurt some fans out there. Florida State gets back to basics, I feel like, in this game. They didn't throw the ball well at all. And I think that you have to, in really college football, in the way that it's ran now, you have to throw the ball. I think that they're going to be perfectly fine. We also forget that Boston College has a new head coach in Bill O'Brien, which means new offense, new scheme. This game could be interesting, but it's at Florida State. Tomahawk chops. Florida State wins by, I'm not going to say a lot. I think it will be a close game. I think it will be like that Notre Dame game a couple years ago where Florida State, hopefully Bill O'Brien doesn't want to execute his players after the game, but, hopefully no players are executed after this game for Boston College. So, Florida State. Ugh. This could get interesting. Virginia Tech versus Vandy. James, your notes on this one?
We'll just start for the pros for Vandy. I think their new stadium is finally complete. So, clap it up for Vandy. Got a new stadium. Proud of them. I got a letter in the mail from Vandy the other day. I'm trying to recruit me to go to their college. And it was $95,000 a year that included tuition and room and board. So I'm glad that money's going to somewhat good use. I think that's an outrageous amount of money to attend college. I personally have Virginia Tech winning the ACC this year. I think Drones was a really good quarterback last year. And, he's also a dual threat, which will help them a lot, especially against a very weak Vandy team that sometimes should not belong in the SEC. They will cover a 13.5 spread in the first half. That's not even a question. and it's a noon game. So the little bit of Vandy home field advantage they had, that being a night game, will just disappear. Vandy sucks at football. That's evident. They haven't been good since Carson Palmer was there? Yeah, and that was how long ago? Was Carson? They had some random quarterback that went to the NFL. Haven't been good since then. That's about how relevant Vandy is. I don't remember their only good quarterback. And Kyron Drones is going to slaughter Vanderbilt. Not even close. Stick to baseball and academics, please.
You're thinking of Jay Cutler, who went
Cutler,
to Vanderbilt. Carson Palmer went to USC. G. Russ.
That's right.
Yeah, I agree with what James said. If Vanderbilt has something similar to like the 108th and rush yards allowed, Virginia Tech's going to beat them by like 40. I think it's Clark Lea's last leg at Vandy. If Vandy's going to continue to struggle this year, I think they'll finish last in the SEC. And Virginia Tech's a sleeper in the ACC, relatively easy schedule, and I think that they'll be competing for the ACC title.
Yeah, I'm taking Virginia Tech. I think Vanderbilt's just going to be sloppy, average Vanderbilt. I think Virginia Tech's just going to run it down their throat, and he's not going to be able to stop them, and it's just going to be a long game for Vanderbilt.
Virginia Tech is my ACC favorite. I think that they will win the ACC. The ACC is wide open with Florida State already having a loss. Clemson, they're going to be facing Georgia today. They're going to lose too. It's not going to be a conference game though. In my opinion, Drones would be the best dual threat quarterback in the nation after this season. He's very underrated. This defense also very good. I think it's one of the most underrated defenses in college football. They also have a very good rushing attack. Vandy, on the other hand, I don't know if they will show up to the stadium today. They got a new stadium, so they might want to go see it because they're going to be losing there a lot. It's Neyland North. That's what we call it here in Knoxville. And so that's what it will always be to me. Virginia Tech wins today. Their ACC championship and playoff push starts today. Drones possibly for the Heisman this year too. There you go. This is where College Game Day is going, even though we maybe don't like that show over here at the Splat Sports Network. Notre Dame versus A&M. James?
I think it's fun. Johnny Football is going to be their guest picker. Somewhat a big name. I think Price Davis is kind of up there with them. And so it looks like it's going to be fun, but it's truly a toss-up. The 2.5-point spread, they need to drop it to about 1.5. It's a toss-up. Both teams have a lot at stake. A&M is coming in as the number 20 team in the country, and Notre Dame is the number 7. A&M has a much harder schedule. I think Notre Dame can honestly lose this game and still make the college football playoff just because they're playing a bunch of nobody teams. I think they have 3 hard games on their schedule, whereas A&M is playing a gauntlet schedule, that being the SEC. I think it's going to be kind of a weird reunion between Duke transfer quarterback Riley Leonard, who's now at Notre Dame, and his former coach Mike Elko, who's at A&M. I'm purely taking Notre Dame because Marcus Freeman has more experience coaching a higher-tier football team. No offense to Duke, but they're a basketball school. He's been there a couple of years. He's done a decent job, obviously not as good as what some Notre Dames expect, but, he beat former Heisman winner Caleb Williams, who's now an NFL starter last year at Notre Dame. Truly the only loser in this game is Duke because they lost their star quarterback and their star coach. So they're the only team I really feel bad for.
Yeah, I agree with what James says. Sportsbooks have this at A&M minus 2.5. I think most sportsbooks calculate home field advantage for around a field goal. So everybody's basically saying it's a pick 'em. Do you agree with James? The dynamic between Elko and Riley Leonard will be kind of weird reunion, especially since they went opposite ways. It almost looks like my Elko preferred to have Connor Wegman than Riley Leonard, which I thought was interesting. I don't know how Elko will perform at a higher school. I know what Marcus Freeman has done. He's done a solid job at Notre Dame. So I'm going to pick Notre Dame to go into Kyle Field and kind of shock some eyes, I think, down in Aggie land.
I think this would be a fun game. Two brutes battling it out. I think A&M is going to come out with the win, though. I think they just have more experience against better teams because they're playing a good team almost every week in the SEC. So A&M.
Yeah, I'm going to go with A&M as well. Listen, Marcus Freeman, he's coached in big games. He has not won them. Let's be honest. USC was a big game, but they didn't have any defense, so I feel like that was kind of a give-me game there. He hasn't beat Ohio State. It feels like they're here and they need to be here. That's where their expectations are at, and Marcus Freeman has not proven that they're there. He can do that today, though, with a big win in Aggie land, but it's at Kyle Field. It's the toughest place to play, according to some, not according to me, but it is a tough place to play. It's 100,000 plus strong, and they're going to be rocking. College game day's already there. Johnny Manziel is going to be back. You already know the frats are going crazy. And Mike Elko, it's his first game. I think that he's going to pick up a big win. I like the hire by A&M. I think we talked about it a while back. I think Elko honestly brings something good to this A&M roster, even though he did not look very excited in that introductory conference with, the kind of cult-like things that they do down there at A&M. Connor Wegman, I also think, gets a very good start to the season, while Riley Leonard, I think, has an okay start to the season. Notre Dame, they're projected to go to the playoff. I think they could still make it there. They are an independent, so they don't get the conference championship game. That's a blessing and a curse in sometimes both ways. But I'm gonna go A&M here. I think A&M covers. I think A&M wins.
All right.
And now we're on our game of the week. We said this was going to go to 11. We made it 30 minutes, so maybe we'll talk a little bit after this if we have any questions. But game of the week, USC, LSU. It's on Monday. Don't forget that. And it is in Las Vegas. James.
Pretty interesting. LSU, a 4.5-point favorites, even though this is kind of a USC home game. I mean, it's a 4-hour drive or a 1-hour Spirit Airlines flight from Southern California, where they are at, in LA, to Vegas. So I think that's interesting. They're giving LSU kind of the nod here. Both QBs got to play in their bowl games last year. Do we have the stats? Yeah, we do. So they both have a little experience, both playing under two former Heisman winners in Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, which I think will help them a lot. Obviously, that locker room presence is huge. If you've played any sports, you know how good it is to have that guy, that mentor kind of helping you out. But USC is kind of weak. They don't really have a defense ever. They played in the Pac-12, which is a much weaker conference than the SEC. Haven't really been good since the early 2000s. And LSU and the SEC in general is a much more physical conference, and LSU has a strong defensive leader in Harold Perkins. LSU should cover and honestly win pretty easily. And we even saw a player come out and say, hey, it's strictly a business meeting coming to Vegas. They're not there to go to Caesar's Palace or to go gamble. They're here to come and beat a USC team that just lost maybe the best quarterback they'll ever see in Caleb Williams. And so LSU will cover with ease. It's a good win for them to start off the season and maybe make that playoff push.
I think this game just comes down to whose defense is improved. Both defenses were garbage last year. LSU, they had the Jane Daniels Heisman winner. They only went 9-3. They both brought in new defensive coordinators. I do think that LSU's over. I don't understand the LSU hype this year. They're picked to finish anywhere between 4th and 6th in the SEC. I'm not as high on Garrett Nussmeier. What Miller Moss did in the last bowl game was pretty incredible. And I think with 6 touchdowns. So with that, I think Lincoln Riley's going to shock a few people winning against LSU in the SEC. So I'll go USC. That's also I put 372. That's supposed to be 672.
Oh. Dang. Okay. I don't think LSU has this one. USC, I think they're coming off a good season. I feel like their defense has improved. I feel like they're just going to throw the ball. I don't think LSU's going to stop them. So I'm taking USC.
LSU has the better roster. They return more starters. They also have Will Campbell, who, in my opinion, is going to be the best offensive line prospect in a long time. I think that their offense will center around him. I know that's not a very common thing to center around an offensive lineman, but I play offensive line, so yeah, they're going to center around the offensive line. Will Campbell all the way. USC new QB, really, and Miller Moss. He played in a bowl game. Yes, he had the stats. But it's also who they play against. Louisville. I don't feel great about Miller Moss heading into this game. I think LSU's defense is going to be just slightly better than USC's defense. I think USC's defense does improve, but not enough to stop LSU. LSU is going to win this game. They cover the spread. I would probably take the over in this game. Just gonna safely advise you to take the over in this game. I think we have two more matchups.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Miami versus Florida. This also could have been game of the week. Some good games today. James.
I mean, we'll call it a rivalry matchup. Honestly, Miami and Florida both have been subpar since probably about 2009 when Tim Tebow left the program. I mean, Miami, the coaching is meh. Should not have lost that game to Georgia Tech last year. That is very clearly a coaching error. But the thing that puts Miami over Florida is a better quarterback, Cam Ward, who was he a Heisman contender last year? Washington State
For a little bit.
So obviously he's a decent player playing in the Pac-12, which I think is similar level of play as an ACC. And he's better than Graham Mertz. And then Miami's coaching cannot be any worse than Billy Napier. Billy Napier flat out sucks. I'm very glad he was one of the coaching candidates for Mississippi State. I'm beyond thankful that he didn't come to Mississippi State. We got Mike Leach instead. He's burning what used to be a historic and fun to watch program to the ground. Go Hurricanes.
I'm gonna disagree with James on this one. I think Florida has a talented roster. I just think their schedule is just awful. They play so many good teams. Only one team, I think it's Sanford maybe, who's not very good. And when I look at it, Cristobal's 4-6 in one-score games. I don't like that. I think that Cam Ward, he's obviously the more talented quarterback, but I think it's his first game with the U. I think that there'll be some bumps on the road there. Graham Mertz, one of the highest completion percentages last year. I think that they'll let him loose a little bit more instead of just throwing the underneath routes every game. And I think that since it's in Gainesville, I think Florida wins a close one.
Yeah, that the home field advantage for Florida, I think it's gonna help them. It's gonna be loud. Mertz is a really good quarterback. He had a good season last year. I don't think that their schedule being the hardest in 2024 will affect them in this game. I mean, they're not thinking in the future, thinking about now. So, give me the Gators.
Ooh.
No.
I think that we're forgetting one big thing about this game. It's in the swamp. It's a tough place to play. Here's a little stat for you, a little fun fact. Florida has not lost a home opener, or a season opener, in 34 seasons. That's the longest streak in the NCAA. That streak continues today. Florida barely gets the win. They went on a last-second field goal or last-second score. Cam Ward, I think, has a fantastic game. I think Cam Ward is going to be a Heisman contender. I think he can play. But it's in the swamp. It's SEC ball. It's home opener. Give me Florida right here. If it was a neutral site game, I'm going Miami. If it was in Miami, I'm going Miami. But because it's in the swamp is one of the hardest places to play. I think it's probably top 3 toughest places to play in the country. I'm going to go Florida, even though I hate to make that pick. Give me Florida. And I think this is our last matchup of the week. Interesting one here, James.
This could have been our game of the week. Georgia opens as a 12.5-point favorite. I think they'll cover that. with ease. They still will have Carson Beck, who is currently second in Heisman, what's it called?
Odds.
Odds, thank you. Second in Heisman odds. Cade Klubnik, to me, has not proved jack diddly. Last time they matched up, Georgia won 10-3. So I know the over-under is at like 23.5, I think. It is relatively low. If Georgia's going to cover, it's going to hit the over. Cade Klubnik is not good. But the most interesting part is I know Georgia will win. It's just who will be their breakout superstar for Carson Beck to give the ball to. They have no Trevor Etienne today. He has a 1-game suspension for a DUI. Ra Thomas is currently serving time in jail. He got arrested. And then Ladd McConkey, their wide receiver 1 from last year, and Brock Bowers, their generational tight end, are both in the league. So who is going to be Georgia's big playmaker? That's what we should look out for the season. They'll probably win the SEC. I have no problem with that. Beck could win the Heisman depending on how Dylan Gabriel plays this season. I just look out for who's Carson Beck going to give the ball to, or is he just going to run it down Clemson's throat himself? And then Dabo Swinney sucks at the transfer portal. That's in our other notes. Should be relatively easy for Georgia. I mean, it's not a cakewalk, but it's Clemson, and, I mean, they'll win. Just who are they going to give the ball to?
Yeah, I agree with James. This is definitely a make or break year for Dabo Swinney, especially Cade Klubnik, who's kind of struggled a little bit last year. Former 5-star. My only concern with Carson Beck is he has not won the big game yet, and I think that I don't feel like a lot of people talk about. He's obviously one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country. He just didn't win the big one against Bama, and that basically knocked him out of the college football playoff. I do think that Clemson puts up a very good fight. I do see Georgia winning by around a touchdown, though. James is right. Who's he going to give the ball to, or is he just going to, run it down their throats? I think that, Georgia is going to have a rough year this year, maybe finish 10-2. They have the hardest schedule in the country, but I do think they start off the year right, and they do beat Clemson.
Yeah, I'm going with both of y'all. I think Georgia has this one. Beck's really talented. He's either going to drop back, throw. He will make plays himself, even if he does not have the playmakers around him. And y'all have not mentioned the Georgia defense yet. Strongest point of their team. I said it. Okay. Georgia.
I'm going to go Georgia in this game. Dabo Swinney not taking any transfers this offseason will kill this program. And I think it's going to show in this game. Cade Klubnik is not a good quarterback. I know people say, oh, look where he came from. He went to the same high school as Drew Brees and Quinn Ewers. Doesn't matter. He's not good. Let's be honest here. He would have won. He hasn't won anything yet. Georgia, on the other hand, like Price said, that defense is going to absolutely kill this offense. Trevor Etienne being out, though, I think does hurt the Georgia offense just slightly just because he's serving a week 1 suspension. But Carson Beck, I do believe that his Heisman campaign begins today. In my opinion, he's probably going to win the Heisman. I think Travis Hunter would win it if he was on a better Colorado team. Not going to happen, though. Carson Beck does win the Heisman this year. Go ahead and lock it in there. And, I think that's all of our matchups. We made it, 40 minutes? James, what do you got?
I think a couple more points we're missing is they claim this is a neutral site. It's in Atlanta.
Yes.
That is a Georgia home game. It's just in a nicer stadium, that being Mercedes-Benz. And then also, I think there might be some locker room issues within Georgia. We all saw the memes they made about defensive driving and how they had to have a course about that. Multiple players getting arrested, like the late 2000s Florida team under Urban Meyer. Ra Thomas is in jail. Their wide receiver 1 for this season. Trevor Etienne, Travis Etienne's little brother, is serving a 1-game suspension for a DUI. There is something going on in that locker room that Kirby Smart needs to address, or else this team will end up like Urban Meyer's Florida team, where we look back in a couple of years and, wow, 2/3 of the team had been arrested at some point, and you have a player like Aaron Hernandez that you're going to hear about for the rest of your life. So there's something that needs to be addressed, because if they don't figure that out, you can't win football games when you have players in and out of a penitentiary. You can't win games. Kirby Smart needs to figure that out if they want to win another national championship.
James just said that Georgia has an Aaron Hernandez on their roster. I did not say that. I do not like Georgia playing in a Benz, though. That is a scary thought right there. Georgia players and Benzes do not need to be anywhere near each other. This game will be boring. I feel like ESPN's hyping it up just because they have to, because it's a matchup that they are covering. It's an SEC game. They own the SEC rights. It's going to be boring. That's my opinion. That's all of our picks, though. We'll be back next week. We'll hopefully be on YouTube. Chube will also hopefully be here. Thank you, Price, for coming out. I know had a big game last night, 3 TDs. Check him out. Check out his Twitter. Check out his highlights, all that fun stuff. Go, Davidson.
Thank you.
Anything to say?
Davidson on top.
There you go. Davidson on top. We'll be back next week. We'll have 11 more matchups for you, probably some similar teams here. We're also going to keep records. Price will be the first guest, so he'll be number one. Hopefully he stays number one for a long time. And yeah, check out all the stuff. Splat Sports Podcast will be back hopefully soon. I'm pretty sure this week we're planning on filming one Splat Picks. Also, hopefully back soon, probably next week. So everything's starting to come back. College football's here. I'm going to go eat some breakfast and watch College Game Day. So thank you all for watching. We'll be on YouTube, we'll be on Twitch, and we'll be on Instagram Live yet again next week. See you then. God loves you. Jesus loves you. Adios.